Hello, my name is Alfredo Silva. Okay. And this is my presentation for the skeletal system for Module 4. So you can see this is my piece of paper that has the bones listed on them. Okay, and also, so you can see the back, nothing on it. Okay, so as I said, this is the presentation for Module 4, which is on the skeletal system. And the main components of the skeletal system are 5 things. You have the bones, tendons, ligaments, joints, and cartilage. So those 5 things are the main components of the skeletal system. Yeah, and so the bones can be further classified into one of 7 different categories. So the different categories for bones are there are sutural bones, pneumatized bones, short bones, long bones, flat bones, sesamoid bones, and irregular bones. Yes, so your bones can fall into one of those 7 different categories. And for further clarification, I'll go ahead and give a brief description of each of the 7 categories. The first category is sutural bones. These are small, oddly shaped bones that are found between the flat bones of the skull by the sutures. So those are the sutural bones. You have the pneumatized bones, which are hollow bones that have air compartments in them, air compartments inside of them. So those are the pneumatized bones. You have the irregular bones, which are small, flat. They have odd little ridged surfaces, and just irregularly shaped bones. You have the short bones, which are they're kind of box-like bones, and the carpals and your tarsals are actually short bones. And then you have long bones, which are going to be long and slender bones. And for example, this is like your humerus, your femur, and your radius. Those are all long bones. The next one, sesamoid bones, those would be your they're just kind of like small, and they're like small and flat and round kind of, or sesamoid, they're just kind of small, flat, and round bones. And then you're continuing on after the sesamoid bones, your flat bones. These are an example of your flat bones would be your ribs, your sternum, and the bones at the top of your skull. All those are flat bones, and they're light, but they're pretty strong. They have to be light, considering where they are, but they also need to be strong to protect what's inside. So those are your flat bones. So like I said, your bones will be put into one of those 7 categories. Your sutural, pneumatized, sesamoid, long, flat, short, irregular bones, right? So one of those 7 categories will be where your bones are. Another quick little tidbit before I go on into identifying the bones is that there are 3 main types of cells in the skeletal system. You have osteoblasts, which are bone-forming cells. They form and repair bones. Osteoclasts, which will break down bones, and your osteocytes, which are your mature bone cells. So those are the main cell types of your skeletal system. Now I'm going to go on to identify the bones, and I'm going to use this pencil to help me kind of point. So we'll start with the skull, okay? This bone here in the front, this is your frontal bone. You go into the back, and this is your occipital bone. And then the sides here, the sides of the skull, you have your right and left parietal bones. This one here, this is your temporal bone. And then this little area between your temporal and your zygomatic right here, this is your sphenoid bone. And then let's see, this little ridge area right here, you see this big curve, that is your zygomatic bone, right? And then continuing on, so this is where it gets kind of tricky to point out, because the eyes are very difficult to distinguish. But inside of your eye sockets here, you can point out that you have the palatine bone, and then you have your palatine bone, and then you have your ethmoid bone, and then you have your lacrimal bone. So in the eye, you'll be able to see that. Well, you know, on the diagram, it'd be easier to see, but you have your palatine, ethmoid, and lacrimal bones inside the eye here. So those are inside your eye. Of course, this here above your jaw, I'll just go ahead and say it. This is your mandible. The jawbone is your mandible. This is your maxilla. This is your nasal bone. And this little tiny bone right here, like at the very base, you know, of your nose, is going to be your vomer. That's your vomer. And there's also nasal conchae that you get inside the nasal, inside your nasal cavities here. Nasal conchae, nasal bone, vomer, nasal conchae. And also in your ear, you also have auditory ossicles. I'm sorry, auditory ossicles, and these are bones that kind of lie inside your ear here. So those are all the bones, basically, of the skull, right? And then you go down here, you know, you've got your neck bone and such. You go down for, oh yeah, by the way, these are all in the axial skeleton. I should also, I forgot to point that out earlier. These are all bones of your axial skeleton. So I guess I'll actually just go ahead and do all the axial skeleton bones first. So right in here, it's difficult to see. Between your bone and your neck here, you have your hyoid bone, right? And then further down for the axial skeleton, you have your sternum and your ribs. And these are both a part of your thoracic cavity. And going down further, you know, for your back, you have your vertebrae, right? Your vertebrae. And then you come down here, and these are all part of your vertebral column, by the way. You have your sacrum, which is this here. Yeah. Right here, your sacrum, and then you have your coccyx. So those are bones there, and these are all part of your vertebral column. Now, to try to speed through it so I make the time limit, we'll go ahead and go through the perpendicular skeleton. So your perpendicular skeleton, I'll start with the clavicle, which is this bone here, right? Your clavicle, and then you have your scapula, which is this. So clavicle and your scapula, okay? And then we go down to your arms. You have your humerus, and then going down here, this one is your radius, and this one is your ulna. So these are your arm bones here, radius and ulna. And then you go down to the hands themselves, right? So after your radius and your ulna, you have your carpal bones. And the top ones here, these are called your proximal carpal bones. And let's see. So your proximal carpal bones, the ones that at the top, you know, near your wrist, you have the scaphoid, you have the lunate, you have the coquestrum, and then you have the pisiform. So those are your proximal carpal bones. Then your distal carpal bones near your metacarpals. Your distal carpal bones, let me see. You'll have your trapezium, your trapezoid, your capitated, and your hamate. Those are all the little tiny carpal bones here. Then you have your metacarpals, and then your phalanges, which, you know, will be proximal, medial, and distal, you know, going down. So those are the bones of your hand. But yeah, so those are the bones of your hand, and now we're going to go on to your legs. Here we go. Well, actually, before I do the legs, I should also just go ahead and do the hip bones. Your hip bones, right? Your hip bones, and there are 3 hip bones. You have your ilium, which is like the bigger part here. You have your pubis, which is like this one here, this little line, and then you have your ischium, which is the bottom piece here, right? And then going down to your legs, this is your leg bone. You have your femur, you have your tibia, which is the bigger one, and then you have your fibula, which is the smaller one. And then going down to your feet, you have your tarsal bones. You have the calcaneus, the bigger one, the talus. You have the navicular, and then this one here is going to be your cuboid, and then these 3 here are going to be your cuneiform bones. And your cuneiform bones are going to be lateral, intermediate, and medial. And then you have your metatarsals and your phalanges for your toes. And yes, it's a very speedy version of the bones of the body.